Hi, I'm Jay, and this is how to beat the password game. So the password game is a little neat game made by Neal Agarwal, so you can find it at neal.fun/password-game. It's also in the description, of course. Yeah, this is just telling you if you get stuck on one of the rules, you can come here and find out how to beat it. Or if you just want to see the craziness and you're not bothered with actually trying this yourself, you can come here and see it. The first few rules are of course going to be a bit easier. Let's just start. And okay, the password must be at least 5 characters. We've got that already. It must include a number, so I'm going to write a quite stupid number here. You will see later with the later rules why it's stupid, but I like to make mistakes earlier so that I can demonstrate how to fix the mistakes later. So if you make your own password, you don't have to write the same thing I do. You can write whatever you want. And if you get stuck on something later, I will hopefully have found a way for you to fix your own password. So it should include an uppercase letter. Let's make horse uppercase. So instead of its 999 business, we can just put 5 fives, for example, that's 25, or whatever you want. Actually, this rule 5 is actually one of the most difficult rules. Well, it's not difficult right now, but later on it's going to be incredibly difficult to make rule 5 happen with some of the other rules that are playing part in it, especially rule 30 plus. It's incredibly difficult. So for now, we're just going to do 5555, and your password must include a month of the year. Okay, let's just say June. And must include a Roman numeral. Okay, we could just do a V here, or actually you can also combine these things. So, for example, if you put May instead of June, you would also fulfill the Roman numeral. So if you get to rule 7 and you have already fulfilled it for some reason, that's probably why. Let's include one of our sponsors. Just write the name of one of those companies. And I made some mistakes here on purpose, of course. So this capitalization is actually not a good idea on either of these words, because later on these letters are going to make a big difference for the other rules. The Roman numerals in your password should multiply to 35. Well, that is not possible if we have the Roman numeral n somewhere. So how do we do this? Well, of course, we could just go back to June, but that's not what you maybe want to do. So if you really want May in there, you can just leave it in and not capitalize it. So the M here is not a Roman numeral because it's not capitalized. Now, how do you get to 35? Well, 35, the prime factors are 5 times 7. If you are not familiar with the math, that basically just means there's only 2 ways to get to 35, and that is 5 times 7 or 1 times 35. So what we can do is do a little 5 here, V. There's actually another way to do this. Well, first of all, if you just add the I somewhere, that also multiplies it, but obviously it doesn't do anything because it just multiplies it by 1. So this would be 5 times 7 times 1. You can also just do XXXV. This is just 35 on its own and multiply it with nothing, so it's just 35. And you can also, once again, have as many I's as you want. We're going to start with VII. We're going to later see why this is actually not a good idea, but yeah, we'll do that when we get to it. Now, include this CAPTCHA. Let's just write it down. This CAPTCHA might be problematic later on. We might have to just redo this later, but you can click on this little button here, and that is very helpful. So let's do something interesting. Okay, EM363. Okay, so our CAPTCHA had some digits in it, so our 555 is no longer 25, it's now more. We need to adjust this, and this is what we're going to be doing very often, just going back and adjusting stuff we've done previously so that the new rules also line up. So 363, that's 12 in total, so we still need 13, so we can just do 9, 4, for example, that's 13. Today's Wordle answer, you can of course just Google today's Wordle answer, but that's no fun. We're going to go to Wordle and try to solve it.
Made you
So D is definitely in there, so we know it's dining. Good, and that is a word. Now, of course, just go back to the password game and include it in here. Now, once again, don't write it the way they've done it in Wordle, just lowercase is fine, and that's going to be much more helpful. Your password must include the current phase of the moon as an emoji. Okay, you can Google all the emojis for this, of course, but I've got a little extension here which makes it easier. I personally have no idea what moon phase it is ever. What you can just do is try all of them and it'll tell you if you're correct. And eventually you'll hit the correct one. I think it's this one. Okay, now we've got the GeoGuessr part. Now, if you get to this part and you can seriously you cannot find out what country it is, well, first off, you can just write random country names in until you find something, until you hit on the correct one. Or what you can also do, you can just restart the whole game. The first part, getting to here, is not difficult. You can actually just copy-paste this and then retry. Actually going to demonstrate that. So let's say we get stuck on the GeoGuessr part, we cannot go forward. It's not so important to get this. You can just retry, you can insert the same thing, and the only thing you have to change here is the CAPTCHA. And now, of course, since the CAPTCHA had different digits, we also have to change the 25 thing. So that's how you can restart the GeoGuessr part to get to a different place. So 25 minus 7 is 18. And we just do 99. Good. Okay, so we add something different. Now sometimes you can actually see here in the it tells you the place name here. So this is well, you can just Google this place name. I happen to know that it's a German name, so it can be Germany or Austria. Maybe I'm wrong. Legoland. Okay, so it might be Denmark. Oh, Netherlands. Okay, so I happen to know that there's a Legoland in the Netherlands. So that's how I guessed that. But of course, you can just have a look at this language here also. Or there are many ways to get this. But yeah, if you just get stuck, you can just hit random countries or retry it. Your password must include a leap year. Yes, to do this. So 0 is a leap year. So if you had 0 as one of your digits in the CAPTCHA, for example, you will already have solved the leap year. But we can also do, I don't know, 2024. So the leap year rule, if you don't know, of course, you could Google this if you're stuck on this. If the year is divisible by 4, then it's a leap year. But if it's divisible by 100, so for example, 2100, then it's not a leap year, even though it's also divisible by 4. If it's divisible by 1000, for example, 2000, then it is a leap year, no matter what else. So even though it's also divisible by 100, it's still a leap year. So 2000 would be 2024, but I think the simplest is to just say year 0. Year 0 is divisible by 1000, so it's a leap year. That's going to make rule 5 much easier because we don't have to change any of the digits. Well, not yet. We are going to have to do that for rule 16, which is chess. So, I believe the solution is queen to f7 check. If you have no idea what chess is or don't know the rules or whatever, you can just import this little chess thing in your chess app of choice. I will choose Lichess. So you can go to Tools, Board Editor, and just copy everything over.
I just think this case deserves some answers. But this is out of our domain. You know it's true like a deja vu. Action now.
Okay, and once you've done that, you can click on Analysis Board. On chess.com or other sites, you will have the same stuff, but just different UI. Click the evaluation and it will tell you that indeed queen to f7 check is the correct move here. And this thing will, by the way, always be a somewhat simple thing, so there will always be one clearly better move, usually something that leads to a checkmate in 2 moves or something like that. Yeah, so how do we write this? the algebraic notation Q, and it's important that this is capitalized, by the way, F7, and then don't forget the plus, which means check. That is something that people often forget. If you get here and you have NH, so a knight to the H line, that is awful. I had that once, and it will seriously hamper our stuff later. So if you get that, you might seriously consider just restarting and getting a different chess thing. But queen to f7 check is totally fine. Now, of course, because the queen to f7 check added a digit, our digits are no longer correct. So we have to fix that, as we often have to do with the terrible rule 5. That's 25 minus 14, which is 11. So we can do, I don't know, 9 and 2, for example. Okay, so Paul. Paul is a bloody bastard, okay?
Shut up, Paul.
He is seriously difficult. This is the easy part. We just have to put a little egg here, but later on it's going to be so difficult, you'll see. But one thing that we already have is, if you delete this egg, then it will say, okay, Paul has died, and you have to restart all over. So never delete this egg, right? Sometimes I've just accidentally like selected all and then typed something, and then Paul was dead and I had to restart. So be very careful about this egg. Never touch it. Now, the elements in your password must have atomic numbers that add up to 200. Okay. So this is where all our capitalization and all our other stuff is going to be difficult. This VII thing is already a bunch of numbers that is going to make the atomic numbers so difficult, because V is an element in the periodic table, I is also one, so this is 2 V's and 2 I's, and these add a whole lot of numbers that are going to make it super difficult. What we are going to do is actually just remove this and replace it with XXXE. So then it's only 1 V, and it still adds up to 35 in Roman numerals. That is going to be so much more helpful. And also all these capitalizations, we can just not capitalize the words. That's fine. Netherlands and also shell, we will not capitalize that, and also not horse. Remember, the only reason we capitalized horse was because of rule 3. Your password must include an uppercase letter, but we already have that from the XXXV, so we don't need to capitalize horse, and now this is going to be so much easier. If you don't know all the numbers of the periodic table, I personally have no idea about them. I mean, I know that H is 1 or something, but after that it gets difficult. You can just Google that, of course. I have pre-prepared something here. I have imported the periodic table into this little Python file. You can just see the numbers here and easily add them up to 200. So V, for example, V is 23. So now we just need 7 is 30, and then we need 170, so 177. We don't have a single element that adds 177. So what I like to do is divide it by 2, and then just use the same element. 177 divided by 2 is 88.5, so one way to get to 200 would be 88 and 89. As you can see with rule 12, which we glossed over earlier, the reason why we glossed over rule 12, by the way, was because horse already gave us rule 12, because HO is a 2-letter symbol from the periodic table. Now we have to make sure we have a 2-letter symbol, but I think that's what we already have, so 88 and 89. So that's RA and AC. Okay, let's do RA and AC. By the way, if you get to this part and, I don't know, you did, for example, MG, that is not helpful. You should never do MG or something like that, because it's going to mess up our Roman numerals. So, and if you get here, and that's by the way where you realize that NH, which is knight to the H line, which you might have in the chess part, is going to mess up the elements quite a bit. So that's why this is super difficult. Later on we're going to have more letters, and it becomes very easy to go over the 200 line. So that's why NH, which gives us 113 on its own, is super bad. Okay, let's go back to this. Let's do RA and AC. And so all the vowels in your password must be bolded. Select the entire text and make it bold like that. You have to be careful in rule 19. because rule 20 is very stressful. So what you should do before you bold anything is just copy the entire password and paste it somewhere like here. Okay, now it's pasted. Now, if the password gets lost, we have a backup here. And then we can bold everything. And what's going to happen is the password will be set on fire, which means a bunch of fire emojis will spawn. And it's going to destroy parts of the password. Of course, we have a backup, but we still have to delete all the fire quickly. But we don't want to delete the entire password. You don't want to just select all and delete. That will kill Paul, which will make us lose. So we have to select only the part where the fire is. But we can destroy Dinah and so on because we have a backup. Okay, now let's bold everything and then very quickly delete this fire. Okay. So if it gets out of control, you might have a bit more difficulty with that, but I think if you're prepared, you'll be fine. Now let's get back our original password by copy pasting here, and let's make sure not to kill Paul here. And once again, let's bold everything. And this fire thing, by the way, only happens once, so you don't have to worry about that again. Your password is not strong enough. You have to have this emoji here 1, 2, 3 times, and then it's over. Pretty easy. Okay, affirmations, rule 22. Just have this here. And actually the I in I am loved, I am worthy, I am enough, in this list it's capitalized, but we don't want to capitalize it because that's going to mess up our elements, because I is one of the elements. So we're not going to do I am loved like this. We're just going to have a lowercase I. And once again, we have to bold everything. Now, rule 23. Paul has hatched. Don't forget to feed him. He eats 3 of these every minute. If you don't feed Paul, Paul will die and you have to start all over again. So, and by the way, do not, which is what I did, just paste like 10 grubs here, because that will mean you've overfed him and he will also die. So
maybe we should lay off Paul.
That's what his wife said.
You have to really keep attention on this, and that's what makes everything after this so much more difficult, because you have to every minute add some more grubs. The good thing is you can add a few grubs at the same time. I think if you have like 5 grubs at the same time, that's not overfeeding, so you can always have that. So rule 24, probably the most difficult rule of all. But I have a sure way of doing this. So first what I'm going to show you is one way of doing this. You just search on YouTube for 21-minute timer, and then you have a look at these time codes, and one of them might be the correct number. Now, you can see how this is difficult. It might just not exist. So what we're actually going to do to make this a sure way, well, first we're going to feed Paul, and then what we're going to do is just upload our own video. And then we have full control over the time, of course. So first you have to create a video that is 21 minutes and 33 seconds long. Of course, there are so many free video editors, online video editors. You can have a bunch of ways of doing this. I'm just going to show you one, which is I have the video pad, which is free. And you just take some file from your PC and add it. It doesn't matter what, you add it here, and then it's going to show up like this, okay? If you have a long video file like this, you can just go to the 21 minute and 33 second mark. You can see here is where the cursor is. So we make that say 31:33. Sorry, 21 it was. Okay. If we're close, you can use these little buttons to go frame by frame and get something closer to the truth. And then just drag this down. And once you've done that, you can just mute the audio. Click on here and click mute. And you can click here, right click, and click unlink from audio, and then the delete button to delete the video track. And that will just make it a black screen. So that's how to do that with a long video. If you have a short video, let's pretend this is a short video. You can just insert the video here and then zoom out. Let's feed Paul. Zoom out, mute it, and get rid of the video track. And then let's just copy this a bunch of times until we get to 21. You can see here we're at 20, so we're probably at 21 almost. You can see the cursor is at 20:05, so we still have to do one more. And then what we do is we move our cursor to 21:33. First, let's feed Paul. 21:33. And by the way, the milliseconds don't matter. And now that our cursor is here, once we drag this end time, it's going to snap to our cursor, so that's just going to be correct. Okay, so that's how to do it with short or long videos. Now, once you've done that, you have to export this after feeding Paul. And click here on export video file. Okay, we don't need very high resolution. And you will have to wait a little bit. I'll skip past this. And don't forget to feed Paul. So now we have that on our PC. Now we just feed Paul, of course. And after that, we drag this into here. And you have to say if it's made for kids or not. It doesn't matter what you click on this. And actually, before we go further, we can already see that we have the URL right here. And this URL is incredibly important. We can paste this already here. And it's going to say this video is private, because after you're at this part, the video is actually also already uploaded in some way. So let's feed Paul. So it's just a private video. And then once we get to visibility and click on unlisted or public, it's going to make it available to the password game. I would recommend making it unlisted. That means the password game has access to the video, but it's not going to publish it to your YouTube account. Okay, let's do this first. And we're going to have a lot of trouble after this, but I will show you some ways to get rid of that trouble. So unlisted, save, and the password game actually doesn't update the link, so you have to just retype the link. Well, you don't have to retype it entirely, you can just retype one part of it, and then it's going to see, okay, this is the correct video and it is the correct length. So that's how to do that. So that's probably one of the more important things. And as you can see, we already have some trouble. Our elements no longer match up to 200 because we have elements inside the URL. And our Roman numerals no longer match up because we have a Roman numeral in the URL. And also the digits don't match up because we have digits in the URL. So if you get to this part, you might be at a point where you cannot continue, because you have some stuff with the chest, you have some stuff with the Roman numerals, you have so many things, and the CAPTCHA, of course, you have so many things that are problematic that you can just not do it with this URL. If you get to this point, well, the easiest thing you can do is, first of all, feed Paul and then go back to the CAPTCHA and redo the CAPTCHA. That will make things easier. And what you want is a CAPTCHA that does not have any digits, because you might easily get over 25 if you have digits. So let's just do that really quick. We want a CAPTCHA with no digits. Once again, this might take a while. Okay, BBYMY. Let's feed Paul and then type here, replace the CAPTCHA with BBYMY. Now, the Roman numerals, you cannot change that much. You could replace this with VII, but that's going to mess up the elements even more, and it's just not a good idea. So let's not do that. What we're going to do instead, because this XXXV and this V multiplies to, well, 35 times 5, which is, I don't know, but it's more than 35, of course. So what we're going to actually do is just change the URL. So that's very important. Once you get to this part, you will have to change the URL to something that is more helpful after feeding Paul. How do you do this? Well, you just upload the same video. The length of the video doesn't change, so you can just choose the same file. And in fact, you don't have to go any further than this before you see already the URL. So if you copy this URL into here, well, it's going to tell you, of course, that it's not the right video because it's not available yet. But you can already see from the URL after feeding Paul that this one does have a Roman numeral. This M is a Roman numeral. So this URL is also bad. We want another one. And also it has a lot of elements. Well, the elements are not so bad, but it might be difficult. So what I've actually done is I've written a little script where you can insert the URL, and it's going to tell you a bunch of things about the URL and some other stuff at the bottom, which you can ignore. Let's feed Paul first. I'm a professional programmer, but you might not see it from this script. I did write this script while I was feeding Paul the entire time, so I was a little distracted. It's not great. I will put it in the description anyways, but it's not great code. If you're a programmer, you can probably write this all yourself or do much better than me even. But if you're not a programmer, of course, you don't need any of this. This is all not required. This is just a little extra thing. So if you're not interested in programming, you can skip past all this. And basically, if you're not a programmer, you just have to see if with your own eyes if there are any Roman numerals in there, and also elements and digits, of course. Now, having digits and elements is not so bad, but it might become a problem later on, or it might be already a problem for you if you have, for example, NH as part of the chess thing. So that's how you do it if you don't want to program. You just see if the URL is problematic, and if it is, you redo it, and so on until you get one which is not problematic. Okay, now for the programmers among us, you can have a look at this. This just tells me all the elements in the URL. So we have an Y, an N, and a BA. If there are multiple of the same elements, it will also tell me, and it will tell me the sum of all the elements. So the sum of all the atomic numbers of these elements is 102 inside the URL, I mean. If this is too high, remember we have to have the V here. This is required. And V is 23. So if the element sum is something like 190 or something, then it's already impossible to use this URL. Or, of course, if you have an H here, then it's going to be much more difficult. So this tells us the element sum, which is fine right now, the digit sum, which is also fine right now. And it's also going to tell us if it contains a Roman numeral. We know from looking at it or through going through the code that this URL is problematic, and we're going to redo it again after feeding Paul. Okay, so we're back here. We once again have a URL. We can paste it here and have a look at it with our own eyes, see that it has some elements, some digits, and actually this one does not have any Roman numerals as far as I can see. If you're interested in the code part of this, then you can paste this once again into our little script, and it will confirm that there are no numerals, and our element sum is also a little bit lower, but we have a new problem, which is digit sum. You can also see this with your own eyes. Our digits sum is 8 plus 6 plus 2, which is 16. So we have 16 from our URL and 7 from our chess. That is 23 in total. If you have some other numbers somewhere in there, you might have trouble with that. But for now, we're going to continue because this is doable. We have to check the visibility as unlisted and then save it. Then once again, we have to retype this link, and it will see that the link is correct. It will have trouble with our elements. So now we have to just adjust those. Let's first remove these extra elements. We don't need those. You can count this up yourself or see it in the script that I, P, and O, those add up to 76. Our V is 23, our URL is 76. So what we still need is 101, which we can get through a single element after feeding Paul. So let's add a single element which fulfills our element requirement. Okay, our single element would be MD. We don't want to add MD, of course, because M is a numeral once again. So we could do, let's do FM and H. FM is 100 and H is 1, so that's 101. Now our digits are wrong, of course. We don't want these digits. We still have to keep the 0 and the 7 and this 8 and the 6 and the 2 from the URL and the chess and the leap year. And that's 23, so we need just a 2. And that's going to be our next rule is going to come up. So we're done with all the URL stuff and all the fixing of stuff. Finally. Now, rule 25. Sacrifice must be made. Pick 2 letters that you will no longer be able to use. Now, of course, I would recommend picking letters that you already are not using. So you can just go through the entire thing and check which letters are not in there. You can do that manually, of course. I have a script for it, but you don't need that. Down here, enter the password here. And this little script will tell us that C, G, J, W, and Z are all not used in this password, so we can choose any 2 of these. I will probably just choose W and Z. We can see that W and Z are not used in the password, so we can sacrifice those, select them, and click sacrifice. Now on to rule 26. Your password must contain twice as many italic characters as bold. I think this is where it gets a little bit easier. Once again, you just you can unbold everything first. That's we bolded everything to get the vowels bolded, but now we can, after feeding Paul, we can just do the vowels bold, and everything else is italic. So first we italic everything, and then we bold only the vowels. Twice as many italic letters are contained in the password as bold letters. Don't forget to feed Paul, of course. Okay, we're done with rule 26. At least 30% of your password must be in the Wingdings font. So the thing about the Wingdings font is that it looks quite weird, but the letters are still in there. So all the other stuff is actually not going to be affected. We can, in fact, we can Wingdings these emojis, and it's still going to count as Wingdings, even though it doesn't look any different. So let's just Wingdings the emojis first. Let's just add a bunch. That always works. You can just add a bunch, and then we have 30% Wingdings. Onto the hex color after feeding Paul. The hex color is difficult because it adds digits, or it can add digits. What we ideally want is a hex color that does not have any digits, or a very small number of digits like 1 or 2 or something. If we get a hex code right now that, after feeding Paul, that is larger than 2, then it will be impossible. We need, well, not impossible, but we have to redo the link or the hex code in that case. In this case, I believe it's better to redo the link because there are so many digits in the link. But you might also want to just redo the hex code. So we already know how to redo the link, but the hex code. Well, first of all, how do we get the actual hex code from this color? Well, there are many ways, but this is the way I'm doing it. In Windows, you have the same or similar programs in Mac or Linux. You can just select this, and you can... Microsoft Paint, for me, didn't work properly. So I would not recommend Microsoft Paint, but Paint.net, for example, works always. So you paste it in here. You make sure to feed Paul. And now you just use the color picker. Select this color. Now you have the colors down here. Click on more, and you have the hex code right here. And you can see our hex code includes a 5 and a 0, which is too much for us. So now we can just redo the color, redo this, and I'm going to skip past all of this until we get a color that has only a small number. Finally got something which is great. This is actually perfect because it has no numbers at all. Well, all the digits add up to 0. So we copy this, we insert it here. You will notice that rule 25 is not fulfilled. Let's feed Paul. we have to have a hashtag in front of here to fulfill it. And you will see that our capital letters are once again bad, but hex code, well, capital letters or not, it doesn't matter, so you can just lowercase all of this and you will be happy. All Roman numerals must be in Times New Roman. That's easy to do. The font size of every digit must be equal to its square. Select each digit individually and change their font size to one of these. That's obviously what you do. That doesn't sound so difficult. What is going to be difficult is actually seeing some of these digits afterwards. So I'm going to actually copy my entire password and just paste it here so that we know what it is later. Because 0 squared is 0, so these zeros have to have font size 0. And that means we can not see them anymore. They are still there, but not visible. They still fulfill all the same requirements, but we just cannot see them. Which is not going to be a huge problem, but it might make things more difficult. Rule 31. Every instance, let's read Paul. Every instance of the same letter must have a different font size. This is why adding all these emojis was actually a good idea, because this means getting the 30% thing, rule 27, we can do the 30% thing without adding any more letters. Because if we add a bunch of, I don't know, Q's in Wingdings font, that's going to make rule 31 difficult to fulfill. The emojis are not letters, so they don't count for this rule at all. Let's feed Paul. Now you just have to go through all of these letters and give all the red ones, give all the red letters a different font to what they already have. Okay, so we're done with the letters. I accidentally read the 0, but let's just do that and move on to rule 32. Your password must include the length of your password. Okay, I actually just closed my tab on accident, so I have to do all this speed buttons. Okay, sorry about that. I had a little bit of problems. I redid my password. Some updates. Firstly, I did have a chess thing which included an element, but it's not such a big element. It's RH, which is 45, so that's fine. Also, on the URL, I actually got super lucky, and let's feed Paul. I got super lucky and got a URL first time with no digits at all. It did have a lot of elements, but no digits and no Roman numerals, so that's nice. Your password must include the length of your password. If we just add, for example, 121 here, then that's going to mess with our digits adding up to 25. I think the simplest way to do this is not to add a specific number, but to add so many characters to the password that it adds up to a nice round number that isn't very large. For example, 120. Those digits only add up to 3. And if you're still having trouble with the digits, then you should go back and, check that your CAPTCHA doesn't have digits, and maybe redo the YouTube thing a bunch of times and the hex code a bunch of times until you get better digits. For us right now, 120 is totally fine. First of all, we want 120 to be when Paul has some go-ups. We don't want to go down to 120 and then be scared about Paul dying. So instead of making the number larger, let's just remove something somewhere where it's not so important. I think we can remove some of these lifting guys. Now, of course, our digits no longer add up to 25. So we've got 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 4. So we still need 13 to add up to 25. So we can go somewhere and say, for example, 9, 4. Let's actually go to 130. I think that's fine. So 93 and 130. Let's feed Paul and then remove some of these. Okay, that's perfect. So now it will be at 130 if Paul has 3 grubs and our 25 Rule 5 with all the digits adding up to 25 is also fulfilled. Now we still need to do our font size thing. Let's do that really quick. And of course, don't forget to feed Paul. So, of course, I just showed you this stuff with 130 and we have to do it all over again because now we just need to find a prime number that is somewhat close to our number and doesn't have too many digits. Okay, so we've got a list of all the prime numbers in some area, so let's find one that doesn't have too many digits and is also close to our target number. So we can see here, luckily we have 131. That means we actually have to make this a reasonable font so that we can actually see it, and delete this 0 and make it a 1. Now we need to redo the font size once again. And of course we need to redo the rule 5 again. We can do that by just removing this 9 and replacing it with a 8 and doing the font size again. Okay, so rule 34, this, let's skip that one. I think I agree. We have enough rules already. Rule 35. And actually, this is the last rule. So if you've come this far, say hello to one of the more difficult ones. The password must include the current time. Well, the current time, as you can see, is 1:20. And it does say, well, it says 13:20, but actually 13 o'clock is 1 o'clock. But AM and PM doesn't matter, so don't get bogged down with AM or PM. This is just, if you type in 1:21 somewhere, you can actually see that, 1:21, then rule 35 will be fulfilled, as you can see. Now, if you are at this point and you are having trouble with digits, the easiest thing to do is you pause and then just put in 1:00. That means this time here only adds up to 1. So you can, for example, just reduce somewhere by 1 if you can. And you can just change your computer's clock time to that time. And yeah, I'll show you how to do that in Windows. This is Windows 10. Right click here, adjust date time, regional formatting, additional date time, regional settings. This window, set the time and date. And then you have this little window here. Don't forget to look at Paul and see how he's doing. And then you can change it here. Click here. And then you can just change it directly. do this, you can do a 1 here or 13, doesn't matter. Put this to 0. And so now 1:00 fulfills rule 35. Now we have to do the length of the password, of course. Let's remove some more muscle men. The font size, let's do the font size. 1 and 0. And our digits don't add up to 25 because we just added 1 from the time. So we just replace this 8 with a 7. I got a bit lucky, so this is easy for me. But of course, once again, if you have problems with digits, just redo the hex code or the YouTube URL as many times as you like to get better digits and so on. Okay, so we actually are fulfilling all the rules right now except the current time, and that's just because our time just increased by 1. So all we need to do now is set the time once again, and then wait a bit for, and then set the correct number of grubs so that Paul is fed and also the password is complete. But also, after rule 35 is complete, something else happens, which is that you have to retype the password. And you have to do it within a certain time limit. So of course, what we are going to do is just copy paste the entire thing. You have to copy paste from the password directly. You cannot copy from Google Sheets, okay? Because that will not copy the font sizes, so you would have to do all the font sizes, which takes too long in the time you are allotted. So this is how you do it. You set the time, copy the grubs, paste the grubs, copy the whole password, and then click, yes, this is my final password. And that has to be done quite quickly, so you get everything. And you copy the password from the actual password field here, because that copies all the font sizes and bolding and italics and everything. It copies all of that, so you should be fine. After that, you might just have to remove a grub or add a grub or something. We give him grubs again. We copy paste the entire thing. And this is your final password. Yes, now we have to copy paste it, we paste it. And your passwords must match. The only reason why it is not matching, by the way, this is our little timer. The first time I did this, I actually didn't have it copy pasted, so I just lost here. But yeah, the only reason we are not correct is because Paul ate a grub, as he likes to do. So we just remove this grub and win. Congratulations, you have successfully chosen a password in 131 characters, and the fuse is no longer lit, and that is how you do the password game. Thanks for watching. So Paul is a fucking bastard, okay?
Who is the most popular now?
Paul, you have to marry your mother-in-law if you...